Right, hello, good evening and welcome. My name is Tony, not the other one. Right. So my name's Tony Gimple, and for my sins, of which there are many, and for yours, which I'm sure there are even more, it's been my unusual position is to try and moderate this bunch of reprobates, who sadly are going to try and explain to you all, after you asking a whole load of pig awkward questions, why they've pulled some of the best deals in living memory, why the Chancellor got it wrong, and why now is not a good time for a general election. Oh no, sorry, that's my subject. One word of warning though before we start. If you do decide to ask a stupid question, you will most certainly get a sarcastic answer. If not from me, this bunch down here. What?
Me?
Yeah. No, sorry. Okay,
Lowest form of wit, I will honour everything.
What, sarcasm? No, they're all on somebody else's scripts. Come on, get the bones moving. And another one, just in time. Yes, you are in the right room. Are you? Yeah, this is the funding room. Except we haven't got any, we've run out, we've pulled all the mortgages, and rates have gone through the roof. So you're most definitely in the right room.
2 weeks ago it was the perfect.
You didn't smile at that point. You. Smile. Cheekbones. Lift. Thank you. Right, okay, so let me introduce, what? See, I told you it'd be
Nothing?
fun.
Yeah.
Our friends here, some of them are rather nervous about speaking to even this small audience.
Well, I think when we signed up for this, the mini budget hadn't happened. So.
The more controversial it is, right, the more fun it is. So, let me introduce you to a few people. Oh, another late comer. Or did we start early? I think we might have started early. Come on, you've missed the stand-up comedy. Anyone else? Come on, get the legs going. Right.
Hello, could you speak up?
Can I speak up?
Stand up, yeah.
You want me to stand up? I'll do the stand-up routine or the sit-down routine. Right, okay. I'll stand up to do the speak up. I'll speak up to do the stand-up. Right. So, is anybody here of a tender disposition? Easily offended? Gonna need help or counselling after the programme? Champagne socialist? Think Comrade Corbyn is a good guy? Thank you for volunteering to be today's unwilling victim. Right, loud enough? Can you hear me now? Excellent. And somebody else joins in. So, who have I got on my left? Charlotte?
Sure.
This is Charlotte.
Go without
Hi.
it.
Go without me. Okay. Yeah.
We'll start.
Okay. Hi, I'm Charlotte Rutter. I am the head of communications at Roma Finance. Roma Finance is we are a bridging development and buy-to-let lender. We work in the property investor market specifically, so everything that we do is non-regulated. We lend on projects such as conversions, refurbishments, development finance, bridging, anything like that. We are 12 years old. We exploded basically and had experienced huge growth ever since the COVID pandemic. This is largely due to repeat business, due to the way we treat our customers, and about 50% of our COVID customers at the time are now on subsequent projects with us because of how well we looked after them. So we also have a medium-term solution for buy-to-let, so exits as well, covering the holiday let, HMOs, multi-unit blocks, etc. The events of the last couple of weeks have been unprecedented. The hangover of COVID, Brexit, the war in the Ukraine has created huge pressure on the market. The mini budget has caused a lot of unrest, and nearly 1,000 mortgage products have been pulled out of the market. This has resulted in many mortgage offers being voided, and any lender offering basically a fixed rate product had pulled their offers out because of the volatility of the swap market. It was too difficult for lenders to know how to price things, so they had to pull them out, and we're hoping for some stability fairly soon.
Stability in the lending market? Surely not, let alone in the economy.
That is in a nutshell the situation that we're in at the moment.
We'll go through, we'll do some questions on the fly
Yep.
once you get to know everyone. Gavin.
Fine, hi. So I'm Gavin Richardson. I'm the Managing Director of Mortgages for Business. Mortgages for Business is a specialist buy-to-let broker. We were established in 1990, so 32 years ago. The name's slightly deceiving because we do more than mortgages for business. We do residential, commercial, development, buy-to-let, bridging, short-term finance, just about everything that hasn't got wheels we will probably finance some way or another. We grew from a relatively small commercial brokerage in 1990, as I say, and now we are 25 brokers across the country in two established units in Manchester and Kent. And similar to everybody else I expect on the panel, we are here because to be front and centre in an environment like it currently is and the climate that currently is, it's important that education is as key as do me a deal, because that's not what the business is about at the moment. And if you are not getting, and I think the best advice is probably echoed by someone like Martin Lewis recently, who said that now is probably the time when a broker is more important than ever before. And there is a huge sense of reality in that statement, because as brokerages, as specialists in the mortgage industry across this two tables, we have access to information that's probably not out in the market. We have an insight into lenders, their criteria, their funding lines, their security, what might be coming next, what their thought processes are, how they engage with us. And we understand the issues that both lenders, brokers, you as clients and landlords are facing on a day-to-day basis. And as brokers and lenders, it's absolutely critical that understanding that process and working together within that process is probably more critical than it's ever been before. The volatility that we've seen in the market over the last, let's say, 3 weeks, because that's probably been the most unprecedented period in modern mortgage history, that the timing of everything is so important. If lenders are in an untenable position where they might need to pull an offer, the speed of processing is absolutely critical. So, yeah, I will just sit here and echo Martin Lewis, who obviously you lot all trust implicitly, that says you need a broker more than ever. So, happy to help.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tony.
Laura.
First of all, hello everyone. My name's Laura Toke. I work for a company called SPF Private Clients. And for those of you who don't know who SPF is, we were founded as Savills Private Finance back in 1997, and we're a specialist mortgage broker. So we're probably one of the largest mortgage brokers in the UK. Last year we arranged about £3.5 billion of mortgage lending, but we can transact across the whole market. So we look after specialist buy-to-let, residential mortgages, bridging finance, commercial finance, and also development finance as well. So we can help with anything from sort of help to buy clients buying their first property up to ultra high net worth clients, or even foreign clients as well. And I think I'm just going to echo Gavin and Charlotte's comments. It's never been more important to sort of work with a trusted broker. We're working with the BDMs, we're working with the decision makers, and we're seeing the lenders all the time. So with the way that products are changing so quickly, I've never seen products being withdrawn with such little notice. And if you want to lock in a rate or you want to get a product, you really do need to be speaking and getting the best advice possible because otherwise you're just not going to be able to navigate the market for your circumstances. So I think, it was a crazy week. Things seem to have stabilised slightly this week, touch wood, with some products being reinstated, but at a much higher rate. And that's the issue that we've got. Also, buy-to-let affordability criteria has tightened massively, so stress tests are much harder. In London especially, we're going to struggle with the rental yields, being able to get the loans values that clients are looking for. So obviously it's challenging times, but working with an experienced mortgage broker, you can help, you can really navigate the market and find the product that's best for you. So I'm very much looking forward to this debate. Thank you, Tony, for hosting it, and it's actually really reassuring and nice to see so many property professionals and landlords in the audience. So looking forward to the discussion and reflecting on how the last couple of weeks have been.
Thank you. And lastly,
And leastly, probably. Good afternoon, my name is John Phillips. I am the Managing Director and Founder of Kingswood Associates, same as Laura and Gavin and Emma. We're whole of market brokerages. Our speciality is very much in the more development and the refurbishment space rather than in the buy-to-let space. But I'm sure, same as them, we've spent the last 2 weeks trying to save clients deals, try to save the fixed rates, basically echoing the knowledge that a good broker has you know who to ring to keep a deal alive. I founded Kingswood. I'm not as young as these guys. I founded Kingswood back in '97, and we're a team of 8, so we're a boutique side of things. Smallest deal last year was probably 50,000. The largest deal we did last year was just over 88 million. So we'll do the whole spread from a single refurb through to a tower. It's going to be very interesting the way the market goes. I'm looking forward to this debate as well. Hear what your thoughts are as people in the audience, because you're the guys that have been at the sharp end of it as well as we have. It's interesting to see that the short-term interest rates haven't really moved. In the short-term lending space is pretty much where it was before. Lenders seem to know that they'll get their money back in 12 or 18 months, and they've priced that all the way through. They've priced that accordingly. It's the longer-term lending, and echoing what was said about the volatility in the swap rates, that has caused the trouble. And as that settles down, hopefully we'll see it. All these products come back in and at competitive rates. But in the area where we are, which, as I say, is more refurb and development, it's actually been a little bit more stable, so which is good. So here to answer all your questions as and when. And again, nice to see you all in the audience.
So before we jump into questions, just a bit of a straw poll. How many in this room are purely in the buy-to-let space? Okay. Good number. Development? Okay. Or both? Bit of both. Refurb? Okay, both hands up if you like. Good. Right. Yeah. Anyone into social housing, building, leasing back? Missing a trick, guys. We'll come on to that later. Okay. All right. Has anybody had an offer pulled in the last week or so? On the technicality, you mean they downvalued it or your credit rating sucked? So.
The valuer came into the property, it's a 5-bed HMO, and she claims the fact that the smallest, the 5th bedroom is too small by HMO standards locally, and I've got the measurements. The 5th bedroom isn't even the smallest bedroom, and it's definitely not too small, and I don't know who to go after.
Fine, I don't think there's an answer to that one, but that's probably the valuation kind of thing more than somebody not wanting to lend.
You can. I would go to your lender first of all, or if it's gone through a broker, go to the broker and appeal the valuation. So if the valuation is incorrect and you've got evidence to show that actually it is the wrong size room and that's an incorrect valuation, appeal it.
See, this is the problem. She hasn't included her measurements
Right.
in her report. She's just put too small.
But if you can provide evidence that says the 4th is bigger than the 5th, and don't shoot yourself in the foot in case that doesn't meet the requirements for an HMO in your area as well, I would appeal the valuation, which you're perfectly entitled to do. It may well take some time to appeal the valuation because valuers are somewhat busy at the moment. And just bear in mind, that delay, if your valuation doesn't stack up, rates could go again in that period, and therefore what offer is then subsequently available to you might be slightly higher than the one that you may be falling onto now. So, yeah, so we're fighting for, but start with an appeal of the valuation.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I wanted to ask actually about the development finance. We've been hearing about residential and buy-to-lets, and all do a big board. Those loans, development finance, where you can then also lock in at the development finance stage for a subsequent buy-to-let mortgage. Are those lenders also putting those buy-to-let deals, or have they also got the sort of break clauses in there that they can pull them as you're switching from development to buy-to-let?
Yeah, I think that would depend on the individual lender and how they're funded, and basically what it means to lock in, because a lot of development lenders who also do buy-to-lets will say that you're locked in, and it's a bit of a marketing tool, so that you go with them for the development and to stay with the buy-to-let. If it's not legally locked in, then they can change their rates. And it'll be basically subject to terms and conditions at the time. And I wouldn't be surprised to see in your development offer that there is a clause that says subject to market conditions or subject to usual due diligence or whatever it may be, that gives them that get out. I mean, all lenders basically are allowed to change their minds up until the day of completion. It's just a quirk of the funding system. They can change their minds.
There's another interesting point. Sorry, another interesting
I don't know
point
if that helps.
within that is if it's development to let or is it a refurb to let? Because if it's a refurb, the property, is it sprucing up and not knocking down major walls or actually building from the ground up? It's a refurb property
Both.
to let.
It's refurb
Then
and
you're okay. So then you're
down half the house.
okay. So it's a little bit of everything, but it's probably a heavy refurb
Yeah.
type thing to let. So the offer is probably valid from the first or will expire the first valuation. So you might have 6 months till that offer expires.
Yeah, depending on the term.
But during that time, they will reassess, and if their funding line does not work and it's still a pre-offer stage, and your buy-to-let is not, an offer until they've revalued it after development work has been done, then I'm afraid, as much as I would love to give you reassurances, it is in the mix where the lender can pull the offer.
We've got get-out clauses.
Yeah, constant.
Every offer's always had a get out. It's always been there. Unfortunately, now is the time where we're going. Oh yeah, it's in the small print. It's always been in the small print, and it's there. Most lenders will not want to pull a pre-offer pipeline at all. There's been a lender in the market within the last 12 that's pulled post-offer pipeline. That's horrendous. There will be solutions for those, in terms of the offer may well be repriced. The deal won't be dead. It will be repriced, and that's the frightening thing at the moment is that how quickly the pricing has escalated.
I would just agree and say that a lot of those bridge to let type products are being, those lenders who were in that space are just pulling those products because they might price the bridge at say 0.75 a month, but how can they predict what buy to let's going to be in 6 months time? They can't. Again, it's all just to do with the volatility with the swap rate market. So for us, we did a lot of bridge to let, but all of the lenders that we were using, we don't have those products available anymore because it's just too difficult for them to actually say, yes, we'll lend at this rate in 6 months time. So I would say a lot of the time it's actually better to use a bridging loan with one provider and then come back to refinance with a different buy-to-let lender because they specialise in different areas, and you might find that's actually much more cost effective because that same lender who's really cheap for bridging might not also be the cheapest option for buy-to-let in say 6 month time.
Exactly, as I was saying, it's a marketing play to get you to do the both with them. Do you mind me asking who the lender is?
No, I have got a different form of finance, but I'm just thinking through the market conditions and whether we'd have been in a better position. So it's
Yeah, we call it, as I'm sure everyone else, sort of red door syndrome, which is on the day of completion they can decide they don't like red doors anymore and just pull the loan. Yeah, and it's within their right to do it.
And there's no repercussions. So say
No
they
repercussion.
double their rates, the borrower, they can easily pull out. There's no repercussions on the borrower.
Only as far as the fees that you've paid up until that point, which you may lose your admin fee, broker fee potentially if it's non-refundable, valuation costs, etc., etc. Yeah, you can't claim those back if you pull out of the deal.
The bridge to let products that are actually on the market now have variable rates on the end of them for the buy to lets, which is obviously not what many people are particularly after right now. So the way to check it is you should have a facility letter from your lender. So just go through that and see what kind of the get out clauses are. But if they're pulling their rates, their fixed rates back, then you shouldn't have to automatically go through it anyway. You can use another exit route. So we do have a bridge to let, and it's called a customer for life product, where we can take you straight through from land to buy to let at the complete end. But our rates are variable, so therefore our rates are still, our full product range is still on. But just check the facility letter and then see what your options are there.
You raise a good point there. I'll come back to you in a sec. Okay. So, the looks of things and the show of hands we had earlier, you're all reasonably experienced in borrowing money from lenders for whatever reason, for your own homes, buy to let, come what may. How many of you, and please be completely and utterly honest about this, how many of you actually read the offer letter cover to cover to work out what the lender, broker, can and can't do? 1, 2. Is that follow-on question, or you'll put your hand up? Okay. So, sorry?
I read a couple of them by the third one.
Yeah, they're all the same, isn't it?
And then you lost the will to
And also, if you did read them, it's a bit like reading a structural survey. You'd never actually do anything.
exactly.
They're so weighted in the lender's favour that you would feel scared and pull out. Just,
Yeah.
and it's probably not the right thing to say. But
I think it's a really valid point in terms of they are a boring document, as any legal terms and conditions document are. It comes back to the point we made at the beginning in terms of the value of a broker, because actually you should go through that with both your solicitor, and the broker will understand the nuances in certain lenders' offer letters. You know, you might get the more specialist toppy lenders to get the money, someone like that, you know, and their reasons for pulling an offer are in bold and they're half a page, you know, whereas other lenders it might be hidden in the small print and might not have the same T's and C's. So your broker should also know the nuances in the certain lender's contract. So it's, you know, as much as
They take so long to be received, it's happy to spend 10 minutes reading it.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and it's worth it.
Yeah.
scary, but
I've been
taken
in
6 weeks to
sales,
arrive, yeah.
6 weeks to arrive, yeah.
3 months.
On the day you're due to complete. Yeah. So I've been in sales in one form or another for a very, very long time. And the first two things they ever teach you is caveat emptor and uber mare fide. Now caveat emptor means buyer beware. In this case, you're the buyer. Read the bloody terms and conditions. So you can't complain at a later date when one of this lot or somebody else just changes their mind. At least you know what you're getting into. On the other side, you've got uber mare fide, which is in utmost good faith. So whilst you may be applying for a product, sorry to have a bit of a dig at this point, it's really important that the only thing that you're buying and the only thing they're selling is that which they know and you don't. So by using a broker, you should have that complete and utter, full and honest disclosure about what you're trying to achieve, what they can offer as a broking house, where the holes in it on your side and their side are. That way, you're both entering into the marriage contract satisfied, knowing what you can expect and what they can expect. Clearly the wild card is dodgy budgets, politics, exchange rates, market forces and all the other usual things that go against the anti-landlord and developer sector. Right, sir,
Right.
Back to your question.
Ironically, there was a question before you mentioned
sorry.
about the clauses and read the agreements and so on and so forth. I've actually, fortuitously, part luck, part judgment, got 5-year fixed rate deals on all my portfolio at very, very good rates.
Yep.
However, I don't do what you said, which is go through the detail, and I don't look at each individual clause. Can a lender retrospectively say, that's all very well, I know you're going through your term, it's completed and so on and so forth, however, in this market, it's so volatile, can they basically retract on what I've agreed with them on a 5-year fixed deal?
No.
No,
not post completion.
Not unless you
No.
stop
no,
paying.
you're done. You are safe.
So I'm all right for 5 years.
You're safe.
Yeah.
Good, thank
Yeah.
you. That's my question.
Yes.
Relax.
But just to be a negative in there are some mortgage contracts which are on demand.
Meaning,
On demand, which means at any time during your 20-year period, let alone your 5-year fixed, the lender can call their money back.
right, well,
It's
that's-
called
that's
on
what I
demand.
asked.
But how often has that
depends
happened
on
though?
what deal
We're
you've
having
got.
during the credit crunch quite a lot, which is why lenders and borrowers who are paying perfectly would have their mortgage pulled because it was an on-demand mortgage. Now that's more in the commercial world
Okay.
than
it's not
necessarily in the residential and buy-to-let world.
Mortgage Express were guilty of that.
More, yeah, I'd have to check my memory back.
Crunch,
but
yeah, there was
but
less
this
liquidity
credit
in the
crunch,
market
and there was
2008.
uproar. There was uproar about it.
Sorry, can I just add to this reading of
Yeah.
the document? So, the reason I read the document, yes, is that I'm a solicitor. I'm retired now.
What sort of pay to?
I'm in property right now. I've always been in property, so kind of a habit, so I read it. So, and tell me if I'm wrong, please. The offer is not a contract.
Correct.
It's just an offer. It doesn't crystallize, and they enter into the contract with you until you complete.
It becomes a mortgage.
And if it's on demand, then you're still going to be a bit more in trouble if a crunch comes along. But really, until you complete,
Correct.
you can
Correct,
put it on. You're going to change contracts, by the way.
I liken it to the kind of the
It's an
retail law that, you know, if you see a price in a window, that's just your offer to buy. Until you've actually parted with the money and the money's born down, that's when the contract crystallises.
Completion, like 9 times of the time, the
the contract's entered into, and you're okay for your 5 years or whatever you may want, basically. I had a friend of mine, client friend, we call him, their buyer didn't go ahead just 10 days ago because it was pulled and re-offered on a higher rate. Yes, okay, and he said, right, and it's a nominal deposit, and I'm doing it 5, 6, 5, 10 banks. I'm not doing it because he didn't want to go ahead. Now there's a bit of a dispute going on, but still, it was revoked. So that's, I think, if I'm correct.
Yeah, no, you are. But there's before we got to demonise the lenders, no lender wants to pull a mortgage offer.
No, they don't.
It depends on how the lender is funded and whether they're capital market funded or balance sheet funded. 9 times out of 10, it's the funder in the background that's actually setting the criteria to say, actually, you can't continue to lend at this rate, and the funding line dries up or it's changed. So therefore, a lender doesn't want to do this. They are acutely aware of the ramifications on both brokers in terms of our relationship with clients and the impact on the clients financially. So it's not, you may have a great relationship and have all your portfolio with 2 or 3 lenders. It's not their fault, is, I suppose, my sit on the fence balance view. Not always.
If we forget, it's their job to lend. They don't lend, they go out of business. So it's they want to lend, exactly backing up what everybody's saying, want to lend. Just they have to lend at the right.
No, none of the lenders wanted to pull. We haven't pulled anything, but our products are variable rate or short term, which is not as badly affected by the swap market. It's kind of more residual effect. But lenders that did it, if they hadn't done it, then they were going to be massively negatively impacted because depending on how they're funded. So the funding lines. It's the same. You can get variable funding and you can get fixed funding. So the funding that's fixed, you can still lend at, and it doesn't really matter what the rates are at. But that is often in short-term finance, whereas all the funding in the swap market is variable. So there's just nothing you can do about it.
We haven't found any lenders withdrawing their offers once they've made an offer. We work with 145 different lenders. The only lender we've known is one, and also earlier in the year, Molo, I don't know if anyone used them or has heard of them. They were basically reissuing offers at sort of 8% when they were previously much lower than that. And
8% fee.
Yeah, exactly. Funding line driven. So other than that, the only other one I've heard of is Monument, and we arranged 5,000 mortgages last year. So it's not common for lenders to withdraw.
They do
offers.
Everything they possibly can to not do that.
And there's a lot in the media which is kind of misrepresenting, making out that lenders are withdrawing their formal offers. They're not withdrawing offers. The clients haven't gone ahead on the terms and even got AIPs, and they're just not able to access those products anymore because they're not available.
AIPs being
agreement in principle. Sorry,
in case there's
so for example, there was a woman on the media, I think on Question Time, saying that her mortgage had gone up from circa 2 or 3% to 10%, and it was the way she presented it was as if it was a formal offer, and it wasn't. It was just she was just going ahead with an agreement in principle and providing her documents, and actually it transpired later that was actually a bridging loan that she'd been offered at 10%. So there's a lot of scaremongering in the media, so that's why we say speak to a mortgage broker.
I think it was actually worse than that in terms of reality. It was a PEPA level 7 product for absolutely critical adverse. I mean, desperately critical adverse. She'd missed mortgage payments left, right and centre. So there was never a mortgage offer. There was an agreement of principle to lend at a certain rate, which was originally 4 point something or other. Yeah. Then the adverse came out on the searches, and she'd missed mortgage payments all over the place, and the offer was retracted going, well, you're on this rate because you're such high risk. We'll lend to you at 10%. And she went up. The media jumped on it and went,
So you had a question?
Yeah. So rates that we've had the scary interest rates, and then the mortgage rates have come down a bit. They're still, pretty elevated. To what extent do you think that some of the current rates for buy-to-lets or whatever might come down a bit more once things are settled? Just assuming that Bank of England doesn't raise any interest rates in the immediate term.
My personal opinion is this is a bit like being on the ocean. I might not be in step with everybody else on the panel here, maybe not everybody else in reality, but it's like being on a boat and somebody's dropped a stone, a mile away. Your boat goes up, boat comes down, but then you just carry on. It's a blip, and it's been made worse by the fact that it was the same week as a Labour Party conference, so the press had innumerable people saying it was a disaster. You've got lots of city boys making serious money short in the pound, globally, which again has caused a disaster. Plus the fact the Conservative government didn't publicise it properly, so they didn't deliver the news properly, which again was a disaster. So my personal opinion, rates will come down, and they'll come down pretty quickly, because 7-year money is already cheaper than 5-year money, which is already cheaper than 3-year money. It's just the 2-year spike because of the current volatility, which in my mind is linked to the war in Ukraine. So that's my personal take.
Similar, maybe slightly different view. The volatility in a swap rate market, lenders use the swap rates to hedge against what interest rates are going to do over that fixed period of time. Interest rates are, speculative in terms of they're going to rise to combat inflation. Inflation's running at a 40% high.
Coming down.
The market gets spooked by announcements like we're going to raise 45 billion and have no way of paying it back. So that volatility over the last 3 or 4 weeks has actually seen, 5-year swap rates go up by 2.5% in 3 weeks, where it stayed up, between October 2020, October 2021, it moved by 1%. Between October 2021 and August this year, it moved by another 1.25%, and it's moved 2.5% in the last 3 weeks. So it's gone up there. What the market can't do at the moment, because of the volatility in the swap rate market, is put a stake in the ground and go, well, this is what we think money's going to be over the next 5 years. It's starting to hedge slightly better because the volatility in the swaps over the last couple of weeks has probably only moved 30 pips. It's been hovering around 4.8, 4.9 up to 5.2, that sort of territory. It's not had that massive 1% swing. So lenders are now starting to think, okay, we can start to hedge our money and come back to the market. But the swap rates are an indicator of what base rate will do. Base rate at the moment, 2.25? Yep. It will go again in November, my view, because the market needs that surety to know that actually we're doing something about the current crisis, okay? The size of that move, the best thing that the market can probably do is start to be realistic about what is needed to deal with the current economic climate. If a 0.5 move's probably not enough, let's be realistic. Fed's done 0.75, 0.75, 0.75, and they've got their market pretty much stable. We probably need another %. And that's the reality of what November may well be. The market probability on a base rate move between 1 and 1.75 is around 70%. Now that's a big difference, from where we've moved in the last 10 years, 0.1, 0.25, 0.5, we're going to get scary at a 0.25 move. We may well be in a position where we could, because I have no crystal ball, see a base rate move in November, circa 1%. The likelihood of it going again in December, my view, is again pretty high. So you can read one newspaper and sensationalise the rates. You can read some economic papers where you get a little bit more sensible approach to it. But the reality is most people think you're going to see interest rates, base rate, at around 4% by the end of the year. Yep. Then you've got 2023, where the crystal ball gets a little bit murkier and people don't quite know how it's going to settle down over a slightly longer period. You can read one economic paper and it will say base rate could be at 6% by the end of 2023. Or you read others that say it won't go higher than 4.5. So I would love to be able to answer your question on where I think rates will be. My honest opinion is we're going to see fixed rates in mortgage rates go up again, potentially once or twice this year. Right? And if you think from a specialist buy-to-let rate at the moment, in January I could have sourced you a deal, might have started with a 1, definitely started with a 2. Rates that came out in the last couple of weeks, and you guys will correct me because I'm probably a little bit away from the broking side of things at the moment, most rates are going to start with a 6, some are coming out with a 7. Yep. What I think will happen is we'll get a little bit of a rebalance, or you'll see a bit more coming around at the lower 6% rate. You might see some hovering in the high 5s, but what they will do is probably hedge their or fix their arrangement fees to compensate for that. Is it a 5.99 or a 7.5 rate? You might get a 5.99 with a 2% arrangement fee and a 7.99, or vice versa, a 5.99 with a 3 or 5% arrangement fee and a 7% rate with a 2% arrangement fee. Rates, I think, are going to be in the high 5s, low 6 for the next few years. That's depressing, but it's depressing because our memories are very short, and for the last 10 years we've been absolutely joyfully taking the most out of everything with interest rates so low, and that's brilliant, and that's what you guys have benefited from and need to have done, and great, and you've filled all the political stuff that Tony can talk about, in the social housing gap that you filled, and the importance of you as private rental sector, fab. Prior to that, you go back to 2004, that sort of territory. I'm showing my age now, John, as well. The average interest rate was on a buy-to-let was 4.995%. We own Keystone as a lender. We launched 5 years ago, and really excited because we launched 5 years ago with a 5.99 5-year fix. Great, we launched with a market-leading rate. And now we're getting absolutely about rates in 6s and 7s because we've just not been used to it. And that's the market shock that we've had. Sorry, I'm waffling now. The market shock is so short-term that actually in the last 5 years, if it had crept up from 0.25 to 0.5 to 0.75, we would have just got used to it. Having such a shock in such a short period of time is painful.
So what's interesting, I was just asking Laura, because Laura's closer to the buy-to-let rates than I am, as I would say, on the development side. What are the best five?
So I think our best 5-year fix for limited company at the moment is 6.05%, and for personal names is about 4.24 with Barclays. So that's quite good. They've come back into the market. Obviously, it's changing so quickly that rate might not be available when you come to apply.
By the time you walk out the door, yes.
It has been like that, and the products are literally being withdrawn with no notice at all. But I'm going to agree with what Gavin said. I do think mortgage rates are potentially going to be 7 or 8% next year. Buy-to-let mortgage rates, I think base rate will hit 5.5-6% by the second half of next year, and that's just my personal opinion on.
So rental coverage multiples, because I hear they've really gone up as well.
So here's an interesting example for you on this one, because this is scary, right? So TMW, part of Nationwide Group, one of the biggest UK lenders. So they raised their rental stress test calculation this week to 8.49. Yes, right. So at the beginning of the year, it was 4.99. Right, so you take an average property, 250 grand with £1,000 a month rent. Right, a stress test of 4.99 on a limited company stress test. Right, you'll get 77% loan to value and a loan of around 192,000 against 250. You stress it at 6.54 where it was in September, and you'll get 58% loan to value, a loan around 146,000. You stress it at 8.4, you'll get 114 grand, a loan of 45% loan to value. This is scary stuff if you are going into the purchase market as a buyer, right? If you're buying a property and that's your stress test you've got to deal with. The fear amongst the existing landlords is, well, how do I remortgage my existing deal? I'm a mortgage prisoner. I've got to take the product transfer rate available with my existing lender. That's the only option available to me. It's not. Okay, you need to recognise that under SS13/16 PRA guidelines, do not stress test a remortgage when there is no additional borrowing. You'll get that in the specialist lenders, you may not get that in the vanilla high street. But you need to speak to your broker so you understand how the lenders will stress test your existing mortgage book. I've just gone on a rant.
That's all right, yes. That's fine. Rants are okay. Question at the back.
Just probably quite a different one. So I represent an international development company, and we recently moved to UK. We don't have a track record of developments in the UK, just a broad record, quite significant. With regards to development financing, what we should be aware of when seeking financing for development here in the UK without a track record, and what interest rate would we look to get?
I think that's one for you, John, then.
I suppose so. Which country have you been developing in?
Sorry?
Which country have you been developing in?
So Czech Republic, Poland, Sweden,
Right.
Lithuania, Latvia.
Okay. I mean, a track record is a track record. Yeah. So if you present your CV, the history of the deals that you have done, and you present it clearly to a lender, so this is what we built, this is how much we paid for the land, this is how much it cost us to build, this is how long it took to build, and this is what we sold it for. Mm-hmm. And you've got a portfolio, a history of what you've done, then as long as that can be verified, maybe, then... I'm not saying they're not. Yeah, not saying they're not. But yes, it's a bit like to a certain extent, it's like a first-time developer in the UK. A lot of lenders won't touch you, but there are lenders that will if you partner with the right people. So maybe for the first deal, you need to partner with a UK developer, bring your experience and partner with a project manager maybe. But a track record is a track record. Yeah.
So Roma actually does work with first-time developers all the time. but and as totally agree, track record is a track record, but I think just because you're getting to grips with the UK side of things, it would just be a case of which team are you working with. Obviously, show the experience, but who are you working with? What's the team? What's their experience? That sort of thing as well, and then just be mindful of your exit for obvious reasons right now. So just make sure you've done your research into that. You're not. A lender will probably ask you what your exit plan. Well, will ask you what your exit plan is, but you don't necessarily have to stick to it. If you decide you want to keep them, if you were planning on selling them originally, then it's movable. It's definitely movable, but absolutely first-time developers. Yeah.
Thank you.
Just very quickly on the affordability test. Is it not true that recently they were talking about actually totally scrapping affordability tests?
No, that's residential lending. So they were looking at using the affordability. If you're currently paying £1,000 a month rent, that proves you can pay for a mortgage at £800 a month for rent, even if your earnings don't have the multiples to get you to the loan that you need. So it was using rental affordability to make your assessment for residential mortgages slightly different.
Right, okay. But for buy to let, you don't need, if you're not taking any more money out, you don't need to have the affordability test applied.
For most lenders.
Okay.
So if they are governed by the PRA, it's hidden away in their kind of terms and conditions that if you are doing a like-for-like remortgage, that the PRA stress tests don't apply.
Right.
Okay. Well, there's a bigger point. It's not about whether you're going to be stress tested. It's about, are you running your portfolio as a business? Are you really an accidental landlord or developer? If you were to treat it as you would any other business, pharmacy, medical practice, corner shop, mortgage broking, fund manager, recyclable bottles, immaterial, it's no different from any other business except you're dealing in realty. So don't, if you're overextending, if you're just banking on the value of the property going up in order to fund yet another purchase, banking on the value of that property going up, guess what? You're going to come unstuck. I've been working in the sector for a hell of a long time, and unless you're filthy rich, and are just using your own capital with no mortgages whatsoever, I wouldn't borrow more than 60% loan to value on what is de facto an investment property. Particularly if it's your first time. Yes, you can do it on interest only, but like anything else, if you can pay the damn thing off quicker, ultimately you're going to make more profit and not be subject to the horrors of things like Section 24, where where the amount you can deduct, it's capped. So you need to look at what you're doing as a business, as opposed to you've just had an accident, got a bit of money, bought another property. I'll rinse and repeat. That is the real definition of the accidental landlord or developer. Okay, so.
Do you think, because of all this debate and this stress testing and interest rates going up and affordability of a buy-to-let, that property investor, the cycle is now going back into, for example, I'm thinking about it, forget the buy-to-let for the next few years, just let's develop for end user sales, so a family or a two-bedroom flat. That's where I'm going to make my money, and it's easy to get finance from a bridging company, etc. The arithmetic is more certain to a certain extent as compared to what's going to happen.
I think there's a number of answers to this. I think yes, you're right. The actual spike that
happened before like that as well.
Yeah, and you've seen a spike already last quarter in the number of bridging loans that have actually been facilitated across the market. I think the spike's somewhere around 15 to 18% increase in bridging lending applications over the last quarter. Now that's twofold. One, because people can't get the yields and returns out of the existing properties they got, so they're actually developing, they're using permitted development rights, or they're looking at enterprise zones or things like that to go and explore. You've probably seen presentations today on how to get the most out of your property by converting it from a house to an HMO. You can't just do that on standard terms. So those types of refurbs and bridging finance is, the right thing to do to actually get the most potential return out of an existing property. Is the property market cyclical in terms of how it comes around and how property do it? Is it going to turn into a flip 'em rather than hold 'em scenario? I think it's balanced. I think the ones that will flip and get rid potentially, and I'm going to probably get things thrown at me, may well be the more amateurish new landlords, one property who've been spooked and frightened by it. Those existing landlords who understand the strategy that can hold these things and see the market out, understand that the capital growth and the returns that they get will come round again. We look at the capital growth on a property. We think this year it's probably going to end up on average across all the regions around 7.5% to 8% capital growth for most properties. Next year, none. Year after that, 2-3%. Year after that, 3-3.5%. Year after that, 3.5-4%, and it will come back round again. Yields on the properties, if you look at an average yield, are still better than they were the last 10-20 years. Because again, I'm such a boring geek, I'm going to just spout this stuff out, right? If you look back and say 2004, the average property was £186,000. The average property now is £292,000, right? The average mortgage rate then was 4.99. The average mortgage rate now, 5.6. The average rent on that property, 267 quid. The average rent now, 1,167 quid. So, yes, rates might get more expensive, but the yield that and the return that you're getting on these properties still has a margin in it. And then you've got the opportunity to look at more innovative products that give you the ability to actually refurb, develop, enhance the property, increase it, convert it to an HMO under all the carbon regulations and legislations, and do something about it. And plus all the enterprise zones, permitted development, death of the high street, semi-commercial, etc., etc. Sorry, I'll shut up for a minute. Yeah. I've just fallen down the crack. That's a subtle hint to get me to shut up, isn't it?
With all the activities over the last few weeks, few months, and so on and so forth, what's the panel's view as to how many landlords are going to go, that's it, I'm out. I get wiped out because of the rates when they come to refinance. I mean, all my properties are in London, okay? And my understanding is the volume of landlords, the volume of rental properties available has dropped considerably over the last couple of years.
Shall I give a stato answer and then shut up?
Yeah, good.
Right, so you got the number of rental properties being searched for on somewhere like Zoopla, right, is 142% higher than it's been over the last 5-year average. The actual property supply available is 42% down. Right, so the demand is far outstripping the supply. That's the first primary thing. You've got all your properties in London. So of course it's been difficult over the last 2 years because everybody sodded off out of London because they didn't want to catch COVID. Right? Now they're coming back to the centres, okay, because the industry needs them back in their offices because the office rent's huge and the offices need to have their rent paid because most of the commercial offices form part of large pension funds because the pension funds invest in the commercial property in the central business districts. So they need people back in the offices paying rent because they can't have the properties empty. Right, so there is a commercial element to actually why the cities will start to regenerate because businesses need people back in them and they need that industry back. The other side of that is in the central London areas, predominantly flats, that type of property, the demand for those properties is going back up again. 1-bed flats used to be the right place to be, then it went to kind of houses because I need a garden, I want to work from home, I don't want to talk to my neighbours, I need more space. Now it's actually, 2-bedroom properties is the place to go because I need to go back into the towns but I need a 2nd bedroom for my office. And then I'll shut up. And 1- and 2-bedroom flats are the right thing because the way that all my utility bills have gone through the roof, it's better to have a flat than it is a house from a tenant's perspective. So I think whilst we're seeing an absolute pinch at the moment in cities like London, okay, it will start to come back.
I mean, it's
coming back already.
15 months. I mean, I've been in this game for like 30 years. I've never seen demand for rental properties.
Yeah.
But a 2-bed 2-bathroom in Battersea about 3 or 4 months ago, I had 11 viewings first day, 4 offers above asking, 45 inquiries in 3 days. Never ever been anything like that. And I think my understanding was a combination of the supply has dropped considerably and the pent-up demand post-pandemic, not only graduates from 2021 and now the 2022, and they're all fighting for the same properties.
You've answered your own question beautifully.
I just want to know what your, as a panel, your view is my assessment.
Yes.
Nearly there?
Yeah, I think
Right?
so.
Good,
yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
I think people in London who are coming to the end of their deal and are looking to refinance are going to struggle just because the rental yields are so low in London that where you,
finance is 7%.
Yeah.
It doesn't stack up anymore.
so where you might have been able to get 65 or even 75% now, like the example that Gavin gave earlier with TMW, we've seen them with their stress test and their affordability calculations and the way that they're looking at stress testing at say 8%, it's just not working for the London properties. So they're either going to have to stay on their rate or do a product transfer like Gavin said and see what happens in a couple of years time. I think it is going to be a bumpy ride for buy-to-let investors for the next couple of years, but I think there's other, they can look outside of London where there are higher yields. People are going to be looking at investing in other areas. There's the popularity of holiday lets as well, in coastal towns, etc. But I think yes, landlords are offloading stock because I think we've suddenly seen it change from very much a seller's market to a buyer's market very quickly, and that's just the conversations that I have with the estate agencies that we work with, Savills, Stratton Parker. Suddenly there's a lot of stock being offloaded onto the market, but I think landlords have been doing that for a while with the tax changes which are unfavourable for them, the EPC changes which are coming in, on the older properties that could cost a significant amount of money, but that's where we're going to see the well capitalised savvy investors unfortunately doing well in this scenario, and next year potentially if prices do come down there might be some distress in the market, so opportunity to pick up some below market value purchases as well. So I think bridging will really come into its own a lot over the next year as well.
Very true point. Chap at the back.
Given where we are in the market, are you still seeing parts of the country dealing with things like negative?
Sorry, could you speak up?
Louder. Given where we are in the market, are you still seeing parts of the country dealing with negative equity?
What, on the buy-to-let or for resi?
Resi, buy-to-let, anything?
I haven't seen it.
Not
I
yet.
haven't seen anything like that.
Well, we haven't seen the property. There hasn't been an adjustment yet, as far as I am aware. Stato will tell me different. In the sense
sorry. Got myself a real reputation here, haven't I? Hello, everyone.
Gavin, you answer.
I'll give like some numbers to back this up.
Exactly. No, basically the effects of the last 2 weeks, if there will be any long-term effects, as you know, I've got a slightly different opinion on interest rates to the rest of the panel. I think it is much more of a blip than and it's much more of a press-oriented short-term selling blip than will be a long-term thing. What I hope I'm right as well. But the long-term effects of this haven't translated yet into house prices. And the one thing that keeps house prices up is demand. We're an island. We're simply not releasing enough houses to be built. Planners are unbelievably slow. Planners are not working from home, and they also don't want to be the ones in their high street that are thought of by all their neighbours as the person that gave permission for that field to become 100 houses. They want to be able to walk down the high street and say, I tried to stop it and it went to appeal and I lost. Planners are a nightmare. But what that means for people who own property is there's a shortage of supply. But we're 12 months away from knowing if there's going to be a house price drop because of things like the 4 and 7%, yields and affordabilities, So we don't know yet.
I think,
but it's an opportunity. Definitely, if you're a professional and in this market, especially Laura's a bridge specialist, she'll be incredibly busy this next year because there are massive opportunities coming. Whenever there's turbulence, there's opportunity, and hey, there are winners and losers. Fact, always.
I think that the negative equity side of things is not a risk necessarily in the buy-to-let space because of the maximum loan to value on most products is 75-80% at a push. Where you potentially might see some stuff at the moment is the nervousness around the valuers. They're actually looking out at the market now and coming back with a pessimistic view. So if you were close to that kind of top end, we've seen some horrendous down valuations on a kind of semi-commercial space where we've had down valuations 30-35%.
Complete nonsense.
Right, so these are sometimes the investment valuations or yield-based valuations, so not necessarily the property valuation. Is it a true reflection of the property market at the moment? My personal view, no. And then from the residential side, pure residential side, whilst we've had an influx of 95% loan-to-value products in that space, you're now seeing the government come back in with mortgage guarantee schemes to make sure they don't fall into that. environment as well. So not really seen it in the buy-to-let.
And I think as well, the valuers, they're not always right. At the beginning of the pandemic, we saw some horrible down valuations, and actually the property market grew over COVID by 23%. Yeah. So you can see how this feels a little bit like the beginning of the pandemic in terms of the panic within the wider market. And I think you are going to see some down valuations, because what's going to be happening is, if we look at development, for example, and John will probably agree with me, the valuers are going to be looking at the end product, aka the units, and how that will sell in the residential market, and they'll be factoring in the interest rates, how that's going to affect affordability for, say, first-time buyers, and potentially, taking a 20% hit on the price, or whatever that might be, in terms of what the GDV is going to be for that project. So I think we are going to see some down valuations, but whether those valuations are actually accurate, we won't know until after the event.
Yeah, it's
okay.
So basically, to answer your question in a nutshell, I think we all agree it's too early to tell. Sorry to be. Come back here this time next month.
Yeah. So
we'll do a straw poll.
Yeah.
No, I was just going to say, why do you say you don't agree and you think it's a blip?
I genuinely, sorry, yeah, but perhaps you arrived after I ranted. I think it's all happened at once. It was a very badly delivered mini budget. It was at the same time as the Labour Party conference, so the press were all over it, and there's been an awful lot of short sellers globally working against the pound, which they were anyway, because we haven't put on, as Gavin was saying, we haven't put our interest rates up as quickly as the dollar. The dollar's stronger against every other currency, but the press make it out it's the only the British pound that has suffered against the dollar. So I think an awful lot of people have made an incredible amount of money these last 2 weeks, but that the interest rates will fall a lot more quickly than people think. That's what my opinion is.
America and Australia, for instance, their rates always tend to be a little bit higher because the nuances of the way they blend are different.
Yeah.
So do you think that's part of the picture? We'll come back to some.
Well, the pound is now stronger than it was before the minute budget against the dollar. Already, just because of the bits of positive press, and we will release the OBR forecast, etc.
But it's a very good point you made. Are you Australian?
I'm English, but I've
So the Australian economy is obviously very strong, but their preferred residential lending is longer term fixed rate. German economy is very similar. They lend on 10-year, 20-year fixed rates, where we favour the 2-year, 5-year, because we're brokers and we can flip it around and make more money because we're evil bastards.
We're also clear.
Wow, sorry. But the reality is that the 2 and 5 year, because people are nervous about fixing in for longer terms, where those two economies we talked about, Germany and Australia, don't tend to do that. So it's a bit more stability in their mortgage market.
But then they don't get that.
But that's built into a longer term hedge. So
they don't then get the house price rises, and in Englishman's home. I'm a Welshman, but Englishman's home is his castle, and everybody is so property oriented in the UK. It won't change.
Are you able to get a mortgage for a property here in the UK by having financed by a lender in Europe?
Don't do it. Because you're then opening yourself to currency fluctuations, and that's just the worst idea.
I mean, if it's fixed for like 10 years, is that a reasonable rate?
No, the rate is fixed, but not the fluctuation. You're earning in British pounds and you're paying in Swiss francs, and if the currency moves, you're screwed. So don't do it.
The only time it works, quote a famous Monty Python song, is if you've got £90,000 in your pyjamas and 40,000 French francs in your fridge. But as it's now all in euro, it'd be rather difficult to even get the lyrics to that one right.
Just don't do it.
So look, it's not basically. Don't do it, and you'll probably have you'll probably have money laundering police jumping all over you. Trying.
But borrowing the currency you're paid in.
Yeah.
End of. Yeah.
Do you feel that this current situation is a domestic UK shiver, spook?
It's
2008, obviously America sneezed, we got cold.
The dollar is strong against every single currency. We have this. My opinion. It's a month of chaos.
It's not a worldwide effect.
Not yet.
I think inflation is a worldwide issue, and I think the war in Ukraine has a massive effect on what we were. We were having a conversation with economists in the office the other week, and if the if he was giving us two different scenarios, if the war in Ukraine was to end tomorrow, potentially we could really recover well the economy, but that's unlikely to happen, and it's putting a strain on the supply chain. It's a lot of the reason why the inflation is so high. So it is actually a global issue. What I think the effect of what we're seeing.
Yeah, I think totally agree. I'd love to have been in that meeting, but it'd be very interesting to see what the next inflation number is, because it undershot last time. So inflation's not as high as the British press predicted. It'd be very interesting to see what the next inflation number is, because by the fact that everything's more expensive, it curbs your spending power. So inflation pulls your spending power in, so it brings it down. And if it doesn't go up as much, this is what Gavin and I said on different sides of the table, they won't put it up by a full 1% or even a half. Because it won't inflation. Haven't got that justification to do it, and I'm, when I'm either right or I'm wrong.
Right, we're just about at time.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. That's fine. So let's see if we can sort of wrap this up. Inflation is a real pain on the one hand, because it means you can buy less. On the other hand, rampant inflation erodes the value of debt like it's going out of fashion. And having seen mortgage rates go up at one point from 3-4% to 15, 16, 17% overnight when we came out of the ERM, that was painful. That was very, very painful. I'm not too sure any of you have been through that, but it wasn't. Sonia has. You have. Yeah, you know what it's like.
Twice in one day.
Yeah, thank you. It was a sixpence half a crown moment. Yeah. I won't go down that particular analogy, but anyway. Will rates go up? At some point. Will rates go down? At some point. If you treat everything like a business, where you don't overextend, you've got the right tenants in the right properties for the right reasons, or you're developing where you've got a sale in mind, or you can rent it in the short term till that sale happens, you're running a stable, successful business. The fact that it's based all around a buy-to-let landlord, and all of the political horrors that term seems to attract, it's just another business. Okay, so you know where to find this unfortunate bunch. They'll tell it to you the way it is. But I'll go back to where I started. If you don't want a sarcastic answer from them, don't ask them a stupid question, because it's at the end of the day, it's a Friday. They've been on the stands. And you're liable to get that one if you're not careful how you phrase your question. So, last thing then, and you can collar them outside. Have any of you watched Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy?
Back in the day. The original.
What does it say? Almost rule number 1. Don't panic. Rule, don't bloody panic, keep calm, carry on.
Don't forget your towel.
Oh yes.
Yes.
Yeah, and Angela, I'm glad I had my tail on me the other day, because somebody knocked a half glass of Coke over on the desk, and I just about managed to get the computer off before it soaked into the works and blew me to kingdom come along with it. So the towel came in very handy. Right, ladies and gentlemen, that was actually rather polite and thoroughly boring. I was hoping for something much more heated. But they're all pleased. And if you must make a donation on the way out, it's all the way down to the bottom. Right, thank you very much, panel.
You.
Thank you, audience. Thank you.